On our way to Buffalo, already calculated. The tropical paradise is now Indiana. This is your week preview show all about Notre Dame football. And a fan base that can't wait for that first practice on your 20. Hansen following over the winds because it's over 70 degrees in South. He's for James and National Report and searching for his touchscreen. We are the work celebrating content creators at blueandgold.com. On today's show, we ask the question, can Notre Dame really lead the website? And teach campers, including giving you all the 10 players who need us running forward. There are questions that the new defensive newcomers, Tom Marie, the linebackers coach. Questions for Scott Phillips with you.
Football never sleeps.
And no question mark about it.
All right, Eric. The bad news is your mic sounds even worse than when I said it. It didn't sound good. Mike DeVoy chimed in. I was going to ask the audience if it was just me, and Mike says, did anyone else have garbled sound? It sounded like you were talking into a tin can with your mouth covered. I don't know what happened to you.
Okay, let's unplug it and plug it back in and see if that works. Okay, this is with it not plugged in.
Okay, you sound better than you did previously.
And this is the microphone back on.
All right, cool.
Is it better now?
Better now, yes. I'll let the audience chime in, and hopefully they agree with me. But you sound better now. I could see the enthusiasm from your voice. I couldn't hear it as much.
Do you want me to redo it?
If you want to, I don't feel like you need to, but
that's okay. I stumbled a couple times because I was so excited about the weather here today. It's still 70 degrees like right now as we're recording this. It got up to, I believe, 72. And so I made sure to get outside and remember what that felt like because it's been months.
Well, I was working on the heat index, so I didn't do that, but I'm glad the heat index has improved for us outside. But thanks to everyone tuning in on Monday night with us. Shout out to all you in the chat, Jeff, Mike, Mag. We appreciate you guys spending time with us. Submit questions. Let us know whether or not the audio was good or not, and whether you're catching us live or on replay. Please make sure that you're subscribed to us here on the channel and hit the like button on this video. It's not quite spring football season yet, but you wouldn't know that we're waiting for anything over at blueandgold.com. We have tons of coverage for you, whether it's about football, recruiting, men's and women's basketball. You can try us out with just a $1 trial for new subscribers. Don't miss out on any of that coverage. Become a subscriber today. Use the link in our video description below or head to blueandgold.com and hit the join button. All right. As our headline of tonight's video suggests, we're going to start talking about leaving no doubt. And first up, we'll be leaving no doubt with us, and that is not necessarily what Marcus Freeman is worried about, but that's how we're handling it from this perspective right now. Notre Dame's motto for the 2026 season is pretty clear, that it's leave no doubt. Eric, from your perspective, what can the Irish do this spring to leave no doubt about what the proper expectations for this team should be?
Sure. So my little preamble to it is Notre Dame, what we've seen in January and February, what we more heard about, we haven't seen a whole lot of it, is the football school concept that Notre Dame likes to use in June. They've been doing a lot more of that this winter. So you usually hear about just the winter workouts, how hard they are. Notre Dame has really gotten into a lot of football stuff. They've done a really great job of taking advantage of a bad thing, which was not making the playoff, and turning it into getting ahead for the 2026 season with having a big head start on that. I think they've also done a good taken advantage of, you've got a returning starting quarterback for the first time since 2020. You also have both coordinators back for the first time since 2019. And so, again, you've been able to work in some schematics into your winter workouts without, violating things with having the ball when coaches are around. And I think the other thing that's going to be helpful for that, Tyler, in terms of leaving no doubt, is Notre Dame is going to be able to test its schemes and test its personnel earlier and more effectively than it did last year, which was uh, a big bullet point for Marcus Freeman and for the media telling Marcus Freeman, but he came up with that on his own. In terms of having this team ready to go out of the gate on September 6th. I also think that it's really important in leaving no doubt. You have a roster now of essentially 100 scholarship players as opposed to 85. You really need to flex that depth. You need to build that depth throughout spring. I think that's going to be really important because you are going to have injuries. You're going to have, players that maybe don't perform to what you think. And those guys that are backups need to be ready to rotate in and ready to go. So those are the ones that I came up with. How about you?
Yeah, and speaking of that roster depth, I think you have to make the university's investment worth it too, right? Like the fact that they're willing to commit to having so many players on scholarship, and obviously the revenue sharing that comes with that, the NIL possibilities that come along with that. There's quite the investment in the Notre Dame football program right now from a resources perspective, but also just support in terms of allowing Notre Dame to get undergrad transfers for the football program and things of that nature. Obviously, Shields Hall is a work in progress that is nearing conclusion here later this year. So a lot of investment into Notre Dame is going on, and I think Marcus Freeman is putting Notre Dame in a position to take advantage of that. As it relates to specifically the spring, I think, yes, Notre Dame does have its coordinators returning. I think it's interesting that the other assistant coaches on the defense are all different. Like that is a big transition. What does that look like? Will there be any slip up with the defense? I think I don't have, because of the talent that Notre Dame has on defense, I don't expect there to be any major slip ups, but just want to see the transition with the new assistant coaches and how they sort of make their mark on this Notre Dame defense. I think that as it relates to the defense, the defensive line rotation is something that I think is part of what can set Notre Dame this season apart from last season. I think Notre Dame has a chance to be better there, and it needed to improve there. And I think it's done a good job of trying to address those needs in the transfer portal. And we'll see what that looks like in the spring and then moving into the fall. I think the secondary certainly has tons of talent. Just curious, like how it all plays out and if that playmaking can still stay at the high level that we saw in the back end of last season. I want to see wide receivers making plays for CJ Carr. That's something that we should expect from this offense, and the investment that Notre Dame has made at the wide receiver position indicates that. And then the running back depth becoming less of a concern is something that I think we can get a better sense of this spring, because there's all those guys except for Keaton Young, are going to be there and get plenty of opportunities to show that they can be in the rotation, let alone be a backup. So I think there's plenty of opportunities for guys to prove themselves this spring. What would you say are the biggest weaknesses from last season that still need fixing?
Yeah, I would say I probably would frame it as a challenge more than a weakness. And that would be pass rush with the front four. I still think we have to see that. Notre Dame ended up with a lot of sacks. They ended up, they started the season with 0 and ended up being one of the top 15 teams in sacks. So that was a great improvement. And yet, there's some risk when you have to blitz as much as you could do. I mean, one thing that Miami did great and helped Miami get to the championship game was they could do that with their 4 guys. I mean, they did blitz some, but they could just unleash those 4. And I think Notre Dame probably has the right defensive line coach to do that and has the seemingly material, but we need to see that. Go to the other side of the ball, I'd say pushing the offensive line to be elite is also a challenge. We've seen Joe Rudolph scramble and do a great job of coming up with plan B and plan C when he's had injuries. I think getting this team, I think that this is an offensive line that should have Joe Moore finalist potential to it. But he's going to have to work around some injury recoveries in spring and still get a lot done. I think one thing that we don't think about being a challenge, but that is you think about those transfers that came in and how high caliber those players are. But two things, I mean, they still need to be developed. A lot of them haven't played up to their ceiling at this point for various reasons. And also, they're coming into new systems. I think sometimes we forget that with players like that. We start to see them more make an impression in fall camp than we do in spring. Remember, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, in the spring, it was like, okay. And then really in the fall camp, it was okay. And then about the middle of September, it's like, okay, this is the guy we thought he'd be. I think Notre Dame needs to get to that point quicker with these guys, so that it's not mid to late September. The last thing I'll mention is the nickel position due to injuries mostly, but also I don't know that Devontae Smith was what Notre Dame had at that position in the previous seasons. I think he was good. I don't think he was as solid as some of those players. And again, some of that is injury related. Notre Dame needs a big answer at the nickel position. I mean, it's going to come up at other times, but it's definitely coming up November 7th when Malachi Tony comes to Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Notre Dame just says, you know what, Leonard Moore, you try to take care of that. Yeah, but that will not be an easy task for whoever's asked to try to slow down Malachi Tony. Pass rush with the front four was the first thing on my list, so we're in total agreement there. I think that's something that Notre Dame needs to prove it can handle better and have defensive linemen who can fully embrace that challenge and turn up with better production than it had last season up front, though they ended up piecing together a solid pass rush with the help of the linebacker unit. Short yardage offense is high on my list as well. That goes with offensive line play, tight end play, running back play. I think all of those things combined, how do you use CJ Carr to better put yourself in better positions with short yardage offense? Does that mean trying some more under center stuff? I think that those are conversations worth being had this offseason for Notre Dame's offense. And then one that I think we just assume will get better is field goal kicking. It's hard to be much worse than Notre Dame was last year as it relates to field goal kicking. Spencer Porath comes in from Purdue with expectations to be better than what Noah Burnett was last season through injury, and he'll have the opportunity to do that, but got to go out there and do that. We thought Noah Burnett would be a potential improvement for Notre Dame last season, but that didn't end up being the case.
You know what's funny about those phone calls that I don't mute accidentally? It's always a family member who they should know better. It's never the spam callers that want to offer me money, cash money for my house. Are you moving? Can we buy your house?
You would think the family by now would know that football never sleeps. Come on now.
That's right.
All right. Most of our questions so far have been recruiting related, so we'll leave those till the end when I talk a little bit of recruiting, or at least a little bit later. Maybe if we still get mostly recruiting questions, we can hop in there. I know that's kind of the biggest thing that's actually happening right now. I thought I'd throw this one in here. That's not a question from Ed. Said it's better to look good than sound good. So I think that was. I think that means you were looking better than you sounded, Eric, and we could all sell for that.
Ed might be. That may be a reference, old Saturday Night Live reference. Billy Crystal used to have a character called Fernando, and his motto was, "It's better to look good than to feel good."
That's funny. Our Eric or TD4ND asked, did Eric audition for kicker last year?
You know what? I'm not a very good kicker, but I know somebody who is. Funny story. My oldest son, when he was in middle school, they had him do everything because he was the best athlete. So he was the punter and the kicker. And we went out to kick some field goals. I mean, he couldn't, I mean, it was a disaster. And his friend was holding for him. And then he goes, "Do you mind if I try?" Guess who became the team's kicker? The kid that was holding. He was absolutely excellent. Adam Nottaboom was the kid's name. So no, I just help discover kickers. I don't do any of the actual kicking, except kicking myself when my microphone doesn't work.
And they already have one Eric on the team that can kick, but he uses a K. So the K starts kicker, so he's probably better suited for that. Mike DeVoy says, "My perception is that Eli Raridon was pretty fast for a tight end. Do any of the current tight ends have similar speed?"
You know, when we look back, I can pull it up here, but when we look back at all the Notre Dame tight ends that have run the 40 since 2010, that's a pretty good group when you think about Michael Mayer and Tyler Eifert and everybody else. Eli is near the top of that list. He's not at the top of the list. It was the guy that's name is escaping me that went to the Panthers. Was a little bit faster. Tommy Tremble was, I think, a 4.59, and Eli was a 4.62, but he was near the top of that list. Is there anybody that can run that fast? We have not had verified times on this. My guess is I don't know that he's going to be able to run like that when he's puts weight on, but Preston Frizzell, I think, is probably going to be a pretty fast tight end. I think James Flanagan is a really, really good athlete. I'd be curious what his 40 time was. Those would be the two that I would hold out most hope. I think Ty Washington's probably fast. I think his bugaboo maybe more is physicality. Those would be, and Ian Premer. I mean, Tyler, you did the film study on him. It's hard to tell in the film because of the competition, right. But I mean, that guy did everything. I mean, he was running the ball, playing quarterback, right? I mean,
yeah, it runs. Yeah, they do direct snaps to him. They'll throw it to him. They did a lot of different things with Ian Premer, and he's runs away from guys on the Kansas high school football field. We'll see what that looks like when you get to Notre Dame. It's hard because probably the thing I put the least amount of I don't know. It would be a tough call between NIL estimates and high school 40 reported times. Like those are the things that I put the least amount of trust in that to be accurate. So it's hard to get a sense for what their actual speed is. I think it's more or less. I mean, once they get to Notre Dame, they'll have more measurements as it relates to that you can get sourced information as it relates to that, and then seeing it with your own eyes. So I would lean the way you were leaning with Frizzell probably being the fastest guy of that group. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past Premer to be able to move pretty well and impress when he gets on campus this summer.
Yeah, and the one thing we'll say about Ian too is he did well at the camps and so forth when it wasn't just guys from Kansas competing against him.
Right. Yeah, he has a reputation beyond just playing against lower competition. All right, Eric, we wanted to talk about spring surges, and we're going to do that with trying to name 10 players who need a major spring surge to impact the 2026 season. I ended up sort of coming up with two different lists here that have different slants to them. I'm curious. So here, I'll just say here's what my list came up with. I'm curious how you attacked your list. The two lists I have are sort of, one list is mostly guys that could slide on the depth chart if they don't have big springs. And then the other list is guys that can maybe take someone's spot if they have big springs. So it's kind of the same, but different. They're in different positions, but I think the spring can play a big role in what's to come for either of these lists that I end up coming up with.
Yeah. So I didn't do a good job of defining that well for you. My telepathy was definitely off last night. And I'll blame that on my side of things. I thought about two different lists, but I only made one. I thought of 10 guys whose surge would really help the team in terms of the theme of leaving no doubt. There's also the thought of, I don't want to say make or break, but a guy like Cam Williams, where the window of opportunity may close if he doesn't. And I think he belongs on both lists. So I went with the earlier concept of these are the 10 guys who could really help Notre Dame leave no doubt by a spring surge.
All right,
so
bring it.
What? Okay, bring mine. So
yeah, just do the whole 10.
Okay, number one, I'm going with Christian Gray. Whether he's an outside corner or whether he's the answer at nickel, he could make that. He could make Notre Dame. He's the difference in them being the number one pass defense in the country and maybe a top 10 pass defense in the country. If he can be the elite guy that Marcus Freeman has refused to give up on, I think that's big. Number two, I said Bryce Young. I think Bryce has done tremendous in his first 2 seasons. You think about how far he's come since he was a high school wide receiver at one point, and not a good one, to being a defensive end, and how well he played the run. And I don't think people notice that as much, but he does need to become a pass rush threat more than he is. 3 for me is Will Black. I think whether he's a starter at guard or whether he pushes somebody so much that they become as good as Billy Schrouth, I think Will Black needs to have that kind of spring because he's that kind of talent. Number 4, I went with Elijah Hughes. Notre Dame did great in the transfer portal in terms of bringing some interior linemen in, and they had good success in getting a 6th year for Jason Onye. I think Elijah Hughes really impressed me last year. I did not expect him to be as impactful as he was. If he can make another step, boy, that top of that rotation interior looks pretty good. 5 for me is Logan Thomas. You know, Notre Dame has some intriguing guys on the edge led by Boubacar Traore, but there's not a lot of them that are close to being finished products. And I think you need a 4th guy kind of in that mix with Keon Keeley, Bryce Young, Boubacar. I just don't know if Logan can get to defensive end size, but he needs to, or somebody else needs to pass him up. Number 6 for me is Jaden Greathouse. I think Notre Dame's wide receivers will be kind of the talk of September when they start rolling those guys out. Jaden Greathouse, I think, is a part of that 4 guys at the top of the rotation. I think he can make them really dangerous because he brings something a little bit different than the other 3 in terms of his physicality in the red zone. I think he can make Notre Dame a better red zone team. 7, I went with Noah Grubbs. Notre Dame needs a really good number 2 quarterback, and I am going to stick with Teddy Gerard as my pick eventually. I'm not writing off Noah Grubbs, and whether Noah Grubbs is number 2 coming out of spring, Teddy gets here in June. Whether Noah's number 2 or whether he's pushing Blake Hebert into the conversation, I think Noah has that power to do that. You need Noah Grubbs to be at his best. 8, I went with Cooper Flanagan. I think James Flanagan is going to be the starter. I think you think Cooper Flanagan is. I think those are both really good choices. But the 2 Flanagans and then Ian Premer or another tight end need to be that threesome. So when Notre Dame wants to get in that bully gear, we're going to pound you in the red zone or we're going to kill clock at the end of the game. Did I go off screen there?
No, you're still there. You went darker, but we can still
I saved it with my mouse. I guess I was talking too long without moving the mouse. But Cooper Flanagan kind of gives you that bully feel with the 2 Flanagans that we didn't get to see at the end of last year. Mm-hmm. Number 9, I went with Madden Framo. I like the fact that there probably will be a deep linebacker rotation, just because I'm not sure how quickly Kingston Viliamu-Asa is going to become himself. And Marcus Freeman seems optimistic that's going to happen. But I think Madden Framo needs to keep coming. I think he is going to be a star at some point sooner than later. And then 10, I went with Cam Williams. I think Cam Williams needs Cam Williams to have a strong spring. Mm-hmm. And for me, he's a guy that has a lot of talent, that could help this team. He could be a boundary guy. He could be a field guy. You could even probably put him in the slot. But Notre Dame's, both for injuries and for rotational purposes, needs a strong 5 and 6 in that rotation. I think Cam Williams could be the 6. So that's why I put him on my list.
All right, that's a good list. I had 4 of those guys are included on my list of guys that I think could slide on the depth chart without big springs. Those 4 that you mentioned that are also on that list are Cam Williams, tight end Cooper Flanagan, Will Black, which I guess he wouldn't necessarily slide, but I think he would just it would be maybe a missed opportunity for him if he doesn't have a big spring. And then Logan Thomas as well. Those are the 4 guys from this. The other 6 I had in terms of guys that I think it's not necessarily make or break, like Will Black, like he's got plenty of time left in his career. He can still be a great player for Notre Dame if he doesn't necessarily have a great spring or even becomes a starter this fall. But the guys that I think it's a big spring for that maybe will feel some heat if they don't have big springs. I have Blake Hebert. I didn't put him in anywhere. I went sort of by positionally in terms of order. So this isn't like number 1 is the guy that could feel the most heat, but I have Blake Hebert on there, quarterback. You mentioned Grubbs. There's obviously they're bringing in guys to compete with Blake Hebert and potentially take the number 2 spot from him. So this is a big spring for Blake Hebert. Nolan James as the running back. I think there's 2 very talented freshmen coming in behind him. He's got 2 guys ahead of him that have more experience and have shown some things. Aeneas Williams a little bit more than Keidron Young, but I think there's high expectations for both of those guys if they're healthy. So I think this is a big spring for Nolan James. And then receivers, you said you had Cam Williams on your list. I included Micah Gilbert and Elijah Burris as well. Like it just feels like there's so much talent in that room at the top end that if these guys don't rise to the occasion now and put themselves in a position to be in the rotation in the spring, it's like, okay, then there's going to be other guys that can pass you up. So those
freshmen.
Yeah, the freshmen are good. They might not all be very big because some of them are kind of small, but they have a lot of talent as well. So I think that those are so I included Gilbert, Burris, and Williams on my list. I mentioned Flanagan, Black. I also included Sullivan Absher, someone that I think as Notre Dame looks at its offensive line options, he was put in as a replacement for Billy Schrauth. I don't think anything's necessarily guaranteed for Sullivan Absher moving forward, so I think he needs to have a strong spring to assert himself as someone that deserves to remain in the starting 5 for Notre Dame. I mentioned Thomas, and then the 10th one I had was you mentioned Nickelback as weaknesses or places that needed to improve for next season. And I included Dallas Golden. Like, I think this is a big spring for Dallas Golden to be like, okay, what do we do with our cornerbacks as is? And if Dallas Golden is the nickelback, what does that mean for the rest of the guys? And can we feel confident that Golden can just take it from here as it relates to the nickelback position? I think he is a talented enough athlete that even if he doesn't do that at nickelback, they could move him to corner or safety, and he'd still, or even receiver for that matter, and still be a successful potential player in the long run for Notre Dame. But I think this is a big spring for his future at the nickelback position. And then I will get to, I know it's a lot of talking for me at once, but I'll rattle off the 10 guys that I thought if they have big springs, they can sort of take someone's spot.
It's okay. I'll just sip my coffee.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll make sure my screen doesn't go dark. Rodney Dunham, and you have to too, so make sure you're paying attention. Defensive end Rodney Dunham I had on there. Obviously, that sort of goes hand in hand with the Logan Thomas pick. I think Dunham is one guy that could potentially take advantage of an opportunity there at defensive end. Couple of defensive tackles, Christopher Burgess Jr. and Cole Mullins. Younger guys with some opportunities there. I put Madden Framo on this list for me. I think he could have a very strong spring and be someone that's like, you know what, no matter who is available for us in the fall, we're going to have to play Madden Framo because of the way he's playing and developing at Notre Dame. Safety Joey O'Brien, everyone knows about him, the 5-star safety that everyone wants to see. Javian Osborne, he's the running back I favor of the 2 freshmen. I would not be surprised if Jonas Walton is that person instead. But if you made me pick, I'd pick that. The 2 freshman receivers that I think could put the most pressure on some of the older guys are Caden Finley and Bubba Frazier. I included James Flanagan on this list, even though I give the slight edge to Cooper Flanagan as the potential tight end one. I do think James Flanagan has the potential to do that as well. And then one offensive lineman, Matty Augustine. I just think he's the young guy, in addition to Will Black, that can really push the older guys ahead of him. So those are guys that could maybe disrupt the depth chart with some strong springs.
Before you go on, I just wanted to circle back to Osborne because I'm doing a story on him tomorrow.
Sure.
And I wondered, what is it in the film that you see? Because I asked Tom Lemming the same question. I asked him, I actually said, of the film that you watched and meeting these guys in person, who impressed you the most of the 5 guys in the running back room? And we'll throw Price and Love into that mix too. He didn't say either of the freshmen. Guess who he said out of those 7 people who had the best film?
Including Love?
Including Love.
Wow. The best film. Did you say Nolan James?
Aeneas Williams.
Aeneas Williams. Okay.
Yeah, he said.
I was trying to go off the board.
Yeah.
Is it the Aeneas did a lot of receiving as a freshman? Right. Was that part of it, or as a high school player?
And he was in Joplin, so he wasn't against the kind of competition. He wasn't playing the St. Louis schools that Jeremiah was, but he was really impressed with Aeneas Williams. But he was impressed with all those guys. But I wondered, for you, like Jonas Walton was a 10.6 100 guy. Now, Javian Osborne didn't run track last year. He did earlier in his high school career, and I think his best time was around 11 flat. Obviously, he got faster and stronger. What is it that you see that you like about him over Walton in terms of emerging?
Yeah, I think he's hard to take down. I think that he is slippery. He'll run you over and he'll make you miss. Like, he does a little bit of both of those things. I don't think he has that same kind of speed that you mentioned with Jonas Walton. He has great vision, and he's someone that I really like. Like, he's always trying to get vertical, and I think that's something that running backs can struggle with. Even the guys that are fast, like, they're just so used to being able to run around people and go to the outside and get to the sideline, and then you can't do that anymore in college. But Javian Osborne, like, he is, as soon as he sees an opportunity to start going forward, he's going to try to do that. And that's something that I think, because I guess he would be probably better to speak to them. I would give that credit to the fact that he's played so much high school football. Like, he was a 4-year player at Forney, Texas, a very productive high school player.
6,000 yards.
Yeah, he's so he's so polished. He's so polished as a high school running back coming into the freshman level. Like, he's not the most physically imposing, and you watch him walk into the room, you're not like, oh, there's the next star running back for Notre Dame. But he I think he does a lot of good things really well, and I don't think he'll be afraid to pass block. I think he'll embrace whatever assignments are thrown his way.
Okay, just was curious.
But no, that's a good question. I appreciate that. All right, we do have some other questions we got in here. Brian Habermill says, who is your favorite to be a wide receiver dark horse in the spring, i.e. off the radar on the roster?
So there's 14 of them, so some of them have to be off the radar. It's so hard at Notre Dame because everybody's on the radar. But I'm going to throw 2 names. I like 2 of the freshmen. I like Caden Finley. I think he has a chance to work his way up. And I was really impressed with Devin Fitzgerald and meeting him and just what his production was like, just what makes him tick and not being afraid of competition. I like those 2. Those are my off the radar guys.
Yeah, I think I would, I guess Fitzgerald feels more off the radar than Finley to me, just because Finley was the more lauded recruit, although neither necessarily have like an easy path to playing time.
Right.
So I think if I'm trying to take a guy that's maybe talked about less, I would take Fitzgerald. I do like Finley better as a prospect. But in terms of like where they're at now, I think Fitzgerald is maybe someone that isn't as far along in his development as Finley is. and so that could pay dividends for Notre Dame down the road with the growth that I think Devin Fitzgerald can continue to make. But maybe that happens faster than I'm expecting it to, and then he starts showing out this spring, and pushes up the depth chart.
They are definitely could be each other's agents. They are big fans of each other. They're best friends. Yeah.
TD4ND said, how will Denbrock open up the offense with more wide receiver talent and the loss of J Love and JD?
I think my estimation is that Mike Denbrock is going to introduce more gears to the offense. They're definitely going to have a really good running game, and they're going to feel like they're going to have that for a couple reasons. One is they feel like the offensive line is going to be better, and they also think the running backs are better than people think. They're also going to be able to do other things that make you not be able to sit on the running game. I think Notre Dame's vertical passing game is going to be the best vertical passing game we've seen at Notre Dame in a while. So I think sometimes we're going to see 4 wide. And I also think there's going to be teams that aren't physical, and they're going to say, okay, guess what? We're putting Flanagan, and Premer on the field, and we're going to bulldoze you in the red zone and push you into the end zone and make you cry for your mommy. I think having all those different gears to the offense is going to make it very difficult. Now you're going to be able to see, when they switch out position groups, but it's going to be difficult for you to match up. They're going to be able to find mismatches and weaknesses with those different personnel groups.
Yeah, I'm very interested as it relates to the receivers in terms of how do they use them in combination and tandem with each other. Like if for instance Quincy Porter isn't the boundary receiver you hope he ends up being eventually right away as a what would be a first time starter at Notre Dame. Can they play Mylan Graham, Jordan Faison, and Jaden Greathouse all at the same time? Is that a 3? Because those are 3 we think very talented receivers. Can they make something work with that? Can they do different things with their combinations to challenge defenses and be maybe less predictable with who the boundary receiver, what they're going to do. You have maybe a better sense for what that guy's going to do. If you're moving guys around, maybe that makes the offense more unpredictable and harder to cover, and you end up with better matchups for Notre Dame in terms of if you're going against a boundary quarterback, Mylan Graham's going to eat that guy up if he doesn't get his hands on him. So I think there's maybe some different things that can be done there. And yeah, I don't think they're going to go away from the running game. It certainly will be different. I do think the well-rounded nature of Aeneas Williams' game will help with that. Maybe he's not making the 70-yard runs that Jeremiah Love did, but I think he can do some things in the run and pass game that can be dangerous and be tough to match up with. And then what can Notre Dame do with sort of its backup running backs or rotational running backs to complement that?
The interesting thing about Mylan Graham, and the players haven't really seen Porter yet because he's coming back from the knee injury. Mm-hmm. But when I talked to like Kari Adams, for example, last week, he hadn't gone against Mylan, but he went Mylan Graham. Whoa.
Yeah. I always go back to the first time I saw him at the Irish Invasion when I didn't know who he was. I was like, who's the kid with the purple gloves? Yeah. that kid's good. And it turns out he just got an Ohio State offer, and Notre Dame was about to offer him as well. So he's got a lot of talent, and maybe we talk about him a little less than Quincy Porter because of the star rating and ranking. But I think both could certainly impact Notre Dame a lot this season. Brian Habermill says, what was Notre Dame's defensive blitz percentage last year? I think it was higher under Golden, and I like not needing to blitz.
I'm not sure, Tyler. Do you know? You did.
I do not. I don't know that for sure. I don't have that handy, and I think it's not really easy to look up, unfortunately.
Right. But I will say this. I'll say this. When you talk to people inside the Goog, as they say, they felt like they were forced into blitzing more than they really were comfortable. I know Marcus has said that he really wants to be able to get home with the front 4 at a higher percentage than they were able to last year. They adjusted well, and their pressures were really good. But if they can get that pressure with 4, then they're going to be a nightmare for people.
Yeah, without knowing the numbers, I think if I had it, my sense would be, I think Golden maybe did more. And early on, I mean, we all remember the double safety blitz against Ohio State that got Notre Dame burned in Ohio Stadium. I think maybe Al Golden was doing maybe more exotic blitzes than Chris Ash did. I think Notre Dame certainly involved its linebackers a lot in its pass rush last season. Now, sometimes that was lining up a linebacker as a defensive end and using Kingston Viliamuasa's skills, using Jalen Sneed's skills as pass rushers to impact the game and supplement what you have on the defensive line. So I don't know what the numbers are. I do think I think most teams would rather not have pressure is what people want. Whether they get it with 4 or have to blitz is dependent on their own ability. So that comes up to Notre Dame being able to scheme up and develop guys that can take advantage of one-on-one opportunities and make it hard to stay in front of them to fully embrace the pass rush and get the most out of the pass rush. Mike DeVoy says, would you include Chris Terek in the list of people needing a big spring?
I'm going to let you answer that while I count something else up.
No problem. Yeah, I think I would include that. I think I've mentioned him. I had him on what was it, a potential late bloomers list of guys that are later in their career that haven't really broken through yet, that maybe they do something this year to make a difference and disrupt the depth chart. I think this would be the spring that Chris Terek would need to probably do that in to have the best chance of doing that. Obviously, we know from watching Notre Dame's offensive line the last couple of seasons, who starts the season, that offensive line doesn't mean that's who's going to end the season. So I think regardless of whether Terek becomes a legitimate contender to be a starter for the fall, I think him being in a position to be able to step up and be sort of the next guy in would be a reasonable goal for him. And so I think this spring would be the start of him trying to make good on that. I know he's dealt with some injuries during his time at Notre Dame, and so maybe he's able to get some momentum rolling with a healthy offseason and try to find at least a window to a pathway to playing for Notre Dame.
So what I did was I looked up, and if my math is right here, Notre Dame had 34 sacks last year, and almost half of those were by non-defensive linemen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the sack numbers, as I remember it, like if you track them, like number of sacks throughout the season, like they didn't get many the first couple of games, and then they started involving the linebackers more, and the numbers started to go up. All right, Joe Long says, who do you want to see play more at safety with Schuler, Talich, or Tay Johnson?
I like to see all those guys and Joey O'Brien. I'd like to see that, and Ethan Long. Ethan Long, I forgot about, my late season football crush. I think Tay Johnson and Schuler need to play a lot, but I think you can rotate Talich in and play the young guys too. I think you can play them in packages. But I think Tay Johnson's going to be an All-American this year.
Yeah, I think it's hard to take Johnson and Schuler off the field. I think unless Schuler takes a step back in his game, I would be surprised. I just think that, like, I know you have claimed him as your football crush, but Tay Johnson had a great season, and I think can go even higher this coming season. I think he's someone that you take off the field as little as you need to, and figure out ways to get guys on the field. Otherwise, like I think Talich gets on the field as a third safety more than he gets in as a replacement for either of those two, probably, unless Notre Dame gets really comfortable with the idea of maybe rotating guys and maybe can get a Talich and O'Brien combination in there or find different ways to get those guys on the field. But yeah, Notre Dame has a bit of a embarrassment of riches in the secondary, and those three safeties are another example of it.
Yeah, one thing about Adon is just how smart he is. Aaron Henry, the new DB's coach, was talking about it, how much when he sees film, he can tell how smart he is, and talking to him in meetings and so forth, and how he is a settling influence back there. So there's value beyond his athleticism, which is really good.
I think he sets a physical tone for the defense too. I think he plays with a physicality that's a little bit different than the rest of Notre Dame secondary.
Snead's coach goes, what's his name? Do you remember his name?
Shoot, I'm
BJ.
Yeah, BJ Payne. Is it Payne?
Payne, yeah. So I'm talking to him. This is going into the national championship game. He goes, I'm telling you what, Adon Schuler and Jalen Snead, from a body standpoint, can stand up to anybody in the SEC. He goes, when those guys take their shirts off, he goes, if I look like that with my shirt off, he goes, I'd walk into McDonald's and order a Big Mac and ignore the no shirt, no shoes, no service. And this is a guy that was a pro wrestler at one point.
Yeah. That is something that you would want to flaunt. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the interviews we were able to do last week over at Notre Dame. New Notre Dame linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie was the last of the new assistant coaches to get a chance to speak with us. What were your first impressions of Jean-Marie?
He was a really likable guy. I had seen some interviews of him. I just wanted to get a sense of him from when he was at Michigan. In person, I found him very personable. I loved his philosophy. It didn't feel like coach speak ever when you were talking to him. So one of the things that I really liked about him was in terms of both evaluating players and learning about them and trying to fit in, because he's the stranger in the room. You know, everybody else has some kind of connection to Chris Ash. He said, you really need to get to know them as people. You know, that's how you find out what makes a player tick. And then you add the football piece to it. But that personal piece is always part of that. That impressed me. I like the fact that he was very open to playing a rotation, and he's done that a lot. He said, now you don't play a rotation just to have a rotation. Those guys all have to play max reps if you're going to have 5 deep. But he feels very confident. But I just like the way he's gone about fitting in and learning about everybody else, because, again, there wasn't an obvious Chris Ash connection. There isn't even a non-obvious Chris Ash connection. They both interviewed with the Jacksonville Jaguars after the 2020 season. Chris Ash got the safeties job with Urban Meyer. Jean-Marie did not get the linebackers coaching job with Urban Meyer with the Jaguars, and ended up at Tennessee. But that's two ships kind of passing there. But I just love his approach. I'm really curious to see what he's like in practices in the spring.
And the way things went with the Jaguars and Urban Meyer, Jean-Marie might have been fortunate to not get that job. I think I like something like just the way he talked about the opportunity to coach at Notre Dame. I thought was cool. He said it's one of the best jobs in the country. And he called it a blessing to be in a situation where you know what the expectations are every week and at the end of the year. He spoke highly about Drake Bowen and said he's not just a leader in the room, but a team leader, and that makes a big difference. That helps a new coach like himself. And then he had some cool things to say about Jalen Smith as well, because he was Texas coaching staff when Notre Dame played against Texas in 2015. He called that performance of Jalen Smith as clean of a linebacker game that day of any kid I had watched. I thought it was one of the best performances from a linebacker that I had seen in my coaching career that stood out that day. And he even used him as an example for his players. So I thought that sort of attention to detail, even for an opponent, like a linebacker's coach wouldn't necessarily know what the opposing linebackers are doing, because that's not impacting the way that his team playing. But it speaks to his passion for the game, that he's finding time to watch Jalen Smith and see what he's doing and noticing that and how he can use that to impact his own players.
Yeah, so the question there was, he's coached a couple times in Notre Dame Stadium as an opposing coach. The Texas 2015 game was one of them. The other one was 2007 with Georgia Tech, when they just bludgeoned Notre Dame in the 2007 opener.
And he didn't want to say bludgeoned, right? Or that
He
wasn't the
said,
word.
"Oh, we just scored late." It was like, no, it was over in the first quarter, dude.
We also had a chance to meet with most of the early enrolled freshmen on defense and special teams as well on Wednesday. That didn't include a few defensive linemen: Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Iwatade, Elijah Golden, Tiki Hola, and then linebacker Jacoby Clapper. So we're not excluding them because we don't like them, but we just didn't have a chance to talk to them. Which of the interviews stood out to you? I know you spent time with a couple of guys. I spent most of my time with Jasper Scaife. What'd you think of the player interviews?
So one of the reasons those 5 guys weren't available is their football school went like an hour over the schedule of when we were told to get there.
Yeah.
So we were having a good old time waiting to go in. I spent most of my time with Kari Adams. I just was really curious about him, what his mindset was. And he was really interesting. I mean, he's very confident. Now, he's also a hard worker. He knows he has a lot to get better at. And yet, when I asked him, I said, "Who's a tough cover for you in practice?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I mean, he really didn't understand the question because, and then he finally kind of, Micah Gilbert, now he hadn't gone against Quincy Porter or Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter yet. So maybe that'll take it up a level. He wasn't arrogant or anything. I really liked him, but very, very confident kid. And I mean, when he walks in, just the length and the athleticism, just his build, it's like, whoa, this is a far cry from Sean Crawford, who was a very good cornerback and safety at Notre Dame, but was 5'9". This kid comes in 6'2", long arms, just like, wow, he looks the part. Just how much reverence he has for Leonard Moore and how much he feels like he's learning from Leonard and Christian Gray. I think he will be surprised if he's not a guy that doesn't redshirt this season. It's going to be hard. There's so many bodies there. It's like, why did they bring in Jaden Sanders when they have all these other young cornerbacks? So all that cornerback room is going to be very interesting how that sorts out to me. But Kari Adams, he is not lacking confidence.
Yeah, and I like I mentioned, I spoke mostly with Jasper Scaife, the Australian punter. He was fun to talk to, not just about the foods that he misses from Australia or how far away from home he is, but he's just really excited for the opportunity to try to focus on punting. He said that kicking has been something that he's been passionate about since he was a little kid, and he admitted to being a little restless at practices when he's just punting, when he's used to running around and tackling guys and playing Australian rules football. But I think someone who, as long as he's successful as a punter at Notre Dame, people will really enjoy his perspective and his personality. I thought he was fun to talk to.
That was a great interview. It was really interesting.
Some of the things that stood out from some of the other guys, Chaz Smith, I thought it was interesting the way he spoke about Marcus Freeman. He it was almost like he was talking about a movie star, but he's talking about his head coach. He said it was a surreal feeling. And it said Marcus is unlike anybody I've ever met before. His character is something I never really felt for real. It's a great feeling. So I think that I think we all know the impact that Marcus Freeman has on recruiting and this football program, but to see a guy he's already been committed, he's signed, he's enrolled at Notre Dame, and he still talks about Marcus Freeman in that way, I think is kind of interesting to sort of capture the, I guess, aura that Marcus Freeman has developed around him. Joey O'Brien's sort of similar to the Kari Adams thing. It's like he's a guy that he's elite, and most teams that he joined in Notre Dame history, he'd probably be playing right away as a freshman, but he might not have as big of a role on this team, and he is okay with that. Like, he's competitive and is going to try to change that, but he understands that if he isn't able to crack the depth chart, it's not necessarily a reflection of him as much as it is a reflection of the talent that Notre Dame has on its roster, and he's got to wait his turn and figure out how to best take advantage of his opportunities when given them. I think that was about it. I didn't catch up with many of the other guys, but I thought all those, I mean, not surprising as someone who's had a chance to talk to some of these guys through recruiting. They're another class of kids that I think Notre Dame fans will be excited to get to know and follow their careers. All right, we are running long here. Do you want to squeeze in some Marcus Freeman evolution talk? Should I jump to recruiting? We got some recruiting questions in here. What do you think, Eric?
Let's jump to recruiting. We can save that one for next week because that'll be our big spring practice preview.
All right, sounds good. Let me throw this question in from Jeff Stevens. He's going to carry the questions here shortly. He sent some recruiting questions as well. But Jeff said, losing Lou Holtz has been tough. Do you think ND will have a helmet decal to honor him, or maybe just a game tribute?
Some people have suggested that to me. I know that they're going to honor him in some form or fashion. I think they're talking through that. It wouldn't surprise me for them to have a helmet sticker. I think that would be fitting. I think there's going to probably be other opportunities to honor Lou, and his service is the memorial is going to be Sunday, I believe.
Yeah, and I would be, what they did for Era Parsegian was they put Era like in the thing above the face mask on the forehead. I don't know what that thing's called. So I would be surprised if it didn't just say Lou there. Like that would seem to make an easy thing. You obviously proved you can put 3 letters there for Era. So I think putting Lou in that spot would make a lot of sense. And I'm sure there will be I would be surprised if there aren't multiple game tributes in some ways to Lou Holtz. I think they could do something for every home game and get a cheer from the crowd for that, and people wouldn't get tired of it. So I would expect a lot of things ahead for Notre Dame remembering Lou Holtz. All right, I will jump into the questions Jeff sent on. I guess this isn't a recruit. This is a freshman. So you have an opinion here. The new linebacker recruit from North Carolina, Thomas Davis Jr., was very impressive. Could he crack special teams as a freshman?
I think so. I mean, I think with Jacoby Clapper as well, I think those guys are really good enough athletes to impact special teams. And again, when you have 100 scholarship players, you're looking for ways for players to contribute. I think you could still do that if you wanted to redshirt each of them. You could have one for 4 games and another one for 4 games, kind of filling a similar role. Yeah. But yeah, Thomas Davis Jr., definitely see him playing some special teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm curious to see what the development of him, Davis and Clapper, looks like for Notre Dame in terms of the linebacker position. Not as highly touted as some of the guys that Notre Dame has brought in previous classes, but I think both kids that are going to take on the challenges that are presented to them and be open to playing special teams and doing whatever they can to impact the roster. So that would be a smart way for Notre Dame to take advantage of that.
With Clapper, I'll share a little tidbit that Mike Singer told me, that Marcus Freeman told Clapper that Jacoby reminds Marcus of Marcus as a linebacker. I thought that was pretty high praise, and not just because they're both from Ohio.
Yeah, that's pretty good recruiting pitch, right? Like, what do you mean, coach? You don't know what you're talking about?
Brian Kelly was a linebacker. I don't know if the compliment would have been as high. When I was at Assumption playing linebacker, that's you.
Jeff also asked, what is shaping up to be the strongest 2027 recruiting position for Notre Dame, and for what position is Notre Dame behind the curve? I think that I might have had something similar to that last week. I don't remember what my answers were necessarily. I think wide receiver is an area that I think there's a lot of work to do still. I think they have a lot of talented guys there. But that's one position that I think there's just a lot of work. Hopefully you get Julius Jones Jr., who is the son of Julius Jones and former Notre Dame running back, and a very talented and fast receiver out of Florida. And then the rest of the class is a bit of a question mark, I think, right now. As for the running backs, I don't think there's even necessarily a clear, like, this is the guy who's most likely to commit to Notre Dame right now. So there's a lot of work to be done there as well. I think Notre Dame will be fine in the long run. with running backs, given its running back success. But it is a bit of a wide open recruiting spot that Notre Dame's in right now as it relates to the 2027 class with running backs. Where are they the strongest? I think they're sitting really well with offensive linemen. It's a short list, and they're in pretty good shape with a lot of them. James Halter is committed to Notre Dame. They're considering whether or not to play Richie Flanagan on the defensive line or the offensive line, so he could be thrown in that mix as well. And then a guy like Albert Simeon is whether he's a 5-star or borderline 5-star, he's, I think, maybe the best guard in the country. He's high on Notre Dame, and there's a few other guys worth monitoring. Leighton Von Brandt out of Pennsylvania or Delaware. So a number of offensive linemen to track there.
What about our boy Cam Wagner?
Yeah, Cameron Wagner as well. Yeah, I think if you listed the guys most likely to commit among the offensive linemen, I think he would be at the top of that list. That's what the heat index reflects. What other positions?
I only mentioned him because he was on the podcast.
I think they're in a growingly potentially strong. That was a weird way to say that, but the defensive line, I think, is all of a sudden there's intriguing options both at defensive tackle and defensive end that are not only at schools and programs that Notre Dame, I think, has a chance to recruit well, but also at positions that, listen, there's a couple of defensive tackles just in Chicago that Notre Dame would love to have and would be a great recruiting get. There's a sort of late rising defensive end out of Fort Wayne who is high on Notre Dame. What happens there? So I think those two positions are defensive tackle and defensive end better than you would maybe have thought about maybe a month or two ago, just with the turnover in the coaching staff. All right. I think, Jeff had one more question. I'm banking on a lot of the 2027 recruiting success of the Chicago deal. Yeah. So I covered most of those guys in what I just talked about, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason why Notre Dame has a good outlook in this class, even though it hasn't had a crazy start, but it's just somewhat similar to last year where they built up early and then had a little bit of a lull. And then once spring gets going, I mean, they're going to have a bunch of kids on campus March 21st for their junior day. I don't remember what the number was. Mike Singer mentioned it to me earlier today. I think it's like close to 20 guys who have offers from Notre Dame that are going to be on campus for a spring practice. Like that is an incredibly high number. That's like a number you get at a game in the fall or on official visits. That is so that's going to be an interesting weekend to sort of get Notre Dame's spring recruiting rolling. And I don't remember if the Chicago guys or Julius Jones will be there on campus for that weekend, but all those guys are expected to be on campus this spring and be a major part of what Notre Dame wants to do moving forward in the class.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I mean, Notre Dame was really good when players were on campus, and you think about those opportunities.
Yeah.
And how magical campus can be when the weather is as nice as it was today, but also the atmosphere. I mean, they will have started spring practice by then on March 21st. The Blue Gold weekend, there's going to be a lot of former players milling around. That's always impressive. And they just kill it with their June official visits. And that's when it really feels like Notre Dame surges.
I just released the first update to the heat index today. So that highlights some positive and negative movement for Notre Dame. If you want to check that out, head over to blueandgold.com. If you're not subscribed, consider trying us out for $1. And we will be back with you guys next week. Football Never Sleeps. We're getting close to the start of spring practice on March 20th, and we'll be here to cover it all. So we appreciate you being with us here on Monday night. Have a good week. We'll talk to you soon.